Today's episode of Slot Shot Podcast is brought to you by ChristianMingle.com. Find God's soulmate for you at ChristianMingle.com. Are you struggling on dating apps to find a partner who shares your values? Are you tired of faithless sinners, R-rated movies, and today's gluttonous dating scene? If you're Christian and you're single, find God's soulmate for you at ChristianMingle.com.
Welcome back to Slot Shot Podcast, a hockey podcast. We're back in studio. We know we had a little bit of a weird break with the Sunday episode last week, but we're getting back onto the regular scheduled programming of Wednesday recording, Thursday post-date. So we'll see you. You guys will have this one in your hands tomorrow. But we got a couple fun things to talk about. I mean, Paulie, we've been hearing you. The mailbag's been active. The mailbag's been real active, and we'll get into that. But
the mail never stops. It just keeps coming and coming.
Exactly. And as we always do, let's check in with the boys. They had a good week, good weekend.
You know, today's episode is going to be a little bit of an extension of the Crusty Rusty mantra. And my old man tirade started last week. It's going to continue today. And today's opening thought is the ESPN app. The old NHL app, before they sold out to ESPN on the mobile, do you remember how easy it was to watch highlights and to watch extended highlights? You got an 8-minute version of the game that you missed?
Right. Yep. You still do get NHL does their 8-minute recaps.
Online, on .com.
Yep.
On the computer.
And on YouTube.
On YouTube. Are you fucking kids using YouTube? I don't even know how YouTube works anymore.
ESPN minute ads before every highlight?
You get a second of ad for a second of highlight. They show you the wrong highlights. They show it in the wrong order. I missed this Bruins Avalanche game. It was a 4-3 shootout game. Heard a lot of things about it. And I go to watch it. I get a 30-second ad. Then I get a 30-second clip of the game-winning shootout goal, which, all due respect, sign number one, ESPN just doesn't get it, doesn't want to get it. Then it jumps to the game highlights, which is 90 after 30 more seconds of ads, which is a 90-second mashup that was fit for SportsCenter. Didn't show every goal, and.
No, it's the Sports Center highlights are awful. But then I can't close it is my big problem. Then the thing won't fucking close.
Well, the thing is,
keeps rolling and rolling.
When I miss games, I watch my highlights on the can. And this is just completely ruined that for me. So there's your opening Crusty Rusty.
I'm with you. I'd recommend downloading the YouTube app because you can get the 8-minute game. You still have to wait for an ad, but it's better.
Hey, speaking of the YouTube
all right, you guys are going to
find us on the YouTube app at Slot Shot Podcast. A little self-prop right there from Arm Dog. Yeah, you can see our beautiful faces.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Rusty's crusty face if he wants to.
And our set.
So, it's a pretty good set, I think. I think we've done some to always be in a work in progress, but the card's there.
High production value, and it's a little bit of a Mileswood shrine in here. But you know what? We're not sorry about that. We're just not.
No,
we'll never apologize for Woody. Just can't. Today's episode, getting into it, we've got cutting the cord. Willy Styles, a little return of the worm. Rusty wants to talk about it. And it's a little bit of a tough days in the Jersey Shore. Loose change, Termite of the week, Saturday picks.
Just for the record, Jack, they play in Newark, and their fan base is primarily North Jersey.
I know.
Jersey Shore is really more of a Flyers topic.
All right. Well, it's tough times in Jersey. All right? Is that better for you? Tough times in Jersey as things continue to kind of spiral a little bit for the Devils, but
you might call it a cold day in hell for a Stanley Cup favorite.
Well, and for a Stanley Cup pick of mine, we'll get there. We'll get there. I'm concerned. That's all we'll say at this point in time.
Kings are hitting a rough patch too.
Yeah, they have. I think they've lost 6 in a row.
Well, according to the Rusty logic, all our picks are looking good then because you can't be too good.
You can't be too good. It doesn't work in the playoffs. Yeah. It just doesn't.
Here we go.
Matthew Nyes helped off the ice today with what looked like an ACL.
You thought it was knee. I just can't tell anything.
Looked like a bad injury.
Yeah.
It looked like a non-contact freak knee.
So did we see the injury?
No.
I
just saw him getting up and being helped.
Yep. Bad. Set in the stone. Cutter Gauthier just won a gold in Sweden with the U.S. team. Drafted 2 years ago in the 2022 draft. 5th overall, I believe. Maybe 6th. But, Paulie, set the stage for us. Paulie, are you kidding me? Drysdale for Gauthier. Fire Briere. Cutter must have said he wants out. No other explanation. Can't wait to hear your thoughts. Email 1. Email 2.
Email 1. We're firing Briere. Continue.
confirmed. He wanted no part of Philly. Screw him. Email 3.
Email 1, fire Briere. Email 2, fuck Gauthier.
Yeah. Yep. Paulie, we hear you. As a Philly fan, a Philly guy who lived in Philly, I think, for a little bit of time.
No, I think it's just about Guerrero's obsession with the colors black and orange. But that's neither here nor there. Our listeners don't care. Get into it.
What do we think about this one? And then it leads to where potentially after bonuses, the Flyers were not ready to make Cutter make a spot open for Cutter this year.
That wasn't about this year. That was about last year.
Oh, well, no. I think it would have been.
No, it was last year, but Cutter took that as like, oh, you guys aren't going to like sacrifice to make a spot for me.
Correct.
That's apparently the rumors. He was like, oh, well, you can't make cap, which I kind of understand. Like, if he could have made it to, if that was the only reason they gave him.
Oh, even to set the stage a little bit more.
But that was after his college season.
Yes, correct.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we talking about?
Well,
We're talking about burning that first year of eligibility. That's what we're talking about. That's what it's really about. Is we're talking about getting the 10 games played so that he gets a year closer to his bridge deal. That's what we're talking about.
No, I mean, but
It'd be because Philly was not a playoff team. He was not joining to really embed himself in the team.
Yeah.
We're talking about burning that first year of eligibility and getting a year closer to that first bridge contract.
to put a little bio to it, I think Cutter grew up in the Pittsburgh area. He's a diehard Pittsburgh fan.
Bullshit.
Sidney Crosby fan. This is the first things that came out.
I'm not saying that's not true. I'm just saying that's a bullshit factor about why he wouldn't want to play.
Well,
for
and
the
so
Flyers.
we have a few quotes, but to go into the trade that would move Gauthier, Jesus,
Goat,
Gauthier.
just say goat.
Gauthier,
EA, like the letters.
Gauthier,
Goat EA.
Gauthier. That would move Gauthier to Anaheim in exchange for Jamie Drysdale. Jesus, I really can't speak English. And a second-round pick in the 2025 NHL draft. That would be the trade that would happen between the Ducks and the Flyers. I've got comments from his agent today, but we got to talk about Torch's comments. We got to talk about Briere's comments. We got to talk about Keith Jones' comments. We got to talk about the president's comments. I mean, they all went on a media tear, and they ripped this kid a new one. But I think when you look at it, if you don't want to be a part of Philly, we know Philly's a pretty passionate fan base. They're going to go and they're going to come after you, and I think that's exactly what happened here. But boys, I'm intrigued to hear what we got on this situation because it's going to be quite the interesting one.
If we thought the booing in St. Louis was bad.
Yeah.
It's going to be horrible.
This kid's not going to want to play. When the team comes to Philly, he's going to want to take the night off.
Okay, so I do think there's a lot to say on this. I think we start with the drama, and then I would like to touch on the actual trade.
Very quickly.
Like how, like what it looks like for both teams now.
Agree completely. Before we get into like the drama bit, just a statement on the season so far. What a soap opera year in the NHL.
Yeah, pretty good.
Like it's been juicy for the talking heads, and like this is like the Real Housewives of North America.
Feels like Hollywood may have had its touch on it, but no, it's been
the Real Housewives of Edmonton.
Yeah, no, we got it all. We do. We got gambling suspensions. We got everything with
4
the Senators,
coaching
really.
changes. We've got a lot.
Corey Perry just doing things.
Yep.
We'll get back to him, I guess, today.
Yeah, we're not done there.
Return of the Worm. All right, sorry, but please, Army, kick us off, please.
The drama.
Yeah, so I don't know if we want to set the state. Like, to me, what happened, he wants out. Apparently was known for a good amount of time, and they kept it under wraps. I don't know how well you can do that in a trade negotiation when you offer one of your top prospects coming off of a good World Juniors and say, like, he's on the table. I think there might be some writing on the wall there for Anaheim, but apparently they did a good job. They got Drysdale back, pretty good return for a guy who wants out.
And Briere's excited about it.
And a two, yeah. Then also you have pretty much all Philly trash him.
Yep.
And it's funny, you see all these clips. I saw Gauthier was interviewed by somebody like maybe this offseason, and he gives this quote about how he's like, I was talking to all the training staff in Philly, I was there for like my media day or something, and I saw Torts walking, so I just pushed those guys out of the way and went up and shook his hand. And like, Coach, I'm really excited to play for you. I'm Cutter Gauthier, excited. And apparently Torts was fired up.
Torts' response? I couldn't tell Cutter from a hole in the wall.
Yeah, so we're getting all these different things coming out. You never know.
Also like a handshake and hey, great to hear it, kid. Like,
right.
And then like he's getting on with his day. It's not like they sat down in a room and had a meeting.
Correct.
No, but at the same time, you would hope Torts knows who he is, but maybe that's not what they're expecting in Philly.
I think Torts just played. He played.
I think a funny follow-up question would be like, do you know Matvei Michkov? Ever heard of him? See if he knows. He'll probably be like, nope. Is he in this locker room? No. But so we have all this trash talking coming out, and like, it's kind of a thing that you're looking around and you're like, how do you handle this? I have a couple big takeaways. Two, really. One, I don't like the look for Cuddy Gauthier. I think it's a soft look, especially when it's Philly. It looks worse because it looks like you're not willing to handle that organization and that fan base and that city. Which means, I don't know, on the face surface, it seems like you're a bit softer.
Well, it's hard to make demands when you have 0 played minutes in the NHL. There's no denying that.
Apparently, but apparently not. I mean, he got out, I do think it's odd that he demands a trade from Philly and kind of opens the door to any team trading for him. It's not like he has a no-trade clause.
So, quickly, it sounds like Briere and both and Keith Jones made appearances in Gothenburg to try and talk him out of it, persuade him. It sounded like this is in May, I guess of last May, it was said that Gauthier did not want to play in Philly. It was a long time coming from Briere. It's been going on for a while. We tried to give him space. We tried to get in touch with him many times. They would not communicate as far as his side. So at this point, we had to make a decision. Not very often you find a Jamie Drysdale that you can add to your lineup. When that came about and his name was made available, we got really excited.
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to cut you off, which I think is, again, crazy because they could trade you anywhere. They could trade you to San Jose, which maybe he'd like. Maybe he just wants the warm weather.
That's where his dad played.
Oh, so maybe even more. But
up for a brief stint.
Yeah. But, yeah, so Gauthier, I don't love the look. Now, Adam Fox is another guy who did this same hoopla. Got traded twice because he didn't like where he was traded.
So I want to just make it very clear that the Fox situation in this, they're slightly different. Fox was a third-round pick.
Yeah.
A little bit of a later bloomer. This kid's a top 5 pick.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. But
Fox played 4 years of college. Or 3 years.
I think 3.
But I'm just saying it's a player who has not played in the NHL, got traded, and he's turned out great. He's like...
But Fox turned down... Yeah, okay.
The point I'm making there is like this is not cutting like when I say I'm a little down on like his prospects now. Yeah, I think less of him at the moment, but he could still be really good. Probably will be.
But what Fox did is something that is within the rights of every single draft eligible player, which is he went to university and he leaned on the opportunity to stay there for the years that go past his draft control, and so he had that leverage.
Okay, yeah.
Which is
different.
Different. And that's something that everybody else has because you're giving up years of potential career earnings. So it's a give and take with the Fox situation.
And Philly didn't want it to become that situation. They didn't want to let Gauthier go for free. It's basically.
Well, I don't think Gauthier is going to stick around.
I agree with you, but they were worried about that. I had heard that talked about.
Yeah, but the overall point, I get it's a different situation. This is a player who has not proven anything at the NHL level.
Yep.
Who wanted out without just wanted out, right? And eventually Fox ended up where he wanted to be. And good for him. He's had a good career so far. Great career so far. So that's kind of my point there. Mm-hmm. Down on him, but still could be, doesn't really impact that much.
Can I just make a broad, I think relating to our listeners item here for everybody that's not all the way up to speed on some of the monotony around the NHL draft and how you get into the league is Eric Lindros is probably the biggest story in the history of hockey about refusing to play for the team that drafted you. He was going to get drafted by the Quebec Nordiques, and he said, guys, in his camp, his family, whatever, they were like, we're not playing for the Quebec Nordiques. So they swapped picks, and ended up being Forsberg that they swapped for, which is just crazy and historic. And then in football, which I think everybody knows, was Eli Manning refusing to play for the Chargers and then ultimately swapping the picks with Phillip Rivers, who went 4 to the Giants and working out the other draft compensation. And the key difference here is that when these guys are drafted, right, it's right after their 18th birthday, and it's very rare that they go, 3-4 months from the draft right into training camp. Mm-hmm. So that kind of that draft day, and Eric Lindros was a man-child guy that was definitely going to play on, definitely going to be in camp right away. So this one, it's a multi-year drawn-out piece of the same story, which is drafted by a team, you don't want to play for them, they got to figure it out. And for Philly and the other teams that deal with this, right, they need to be careful they need to clamp this down and make sure word doesn't get out so that they don't lose all their leverage, trying to trade it, right?
Yeah, and the other thing is, apparently Gauthier before the draft was in on being a Flyer. That's what Denny Briere is saying. He said he was in on it.
He said he was built to be a Flyer.
Yeah, so like, and that could just be I'm trying to get drafted. I get it, but at the same time, it is. I think a lot of those things happen before the draft. Sometimes, if you're vehemently opposed to playing for that team, maybe just sacrifice one pick. But yeah.
Oh, and I'll pose the question. I mean, we've seen it in the NBA of forced trades. We've seen it in other sports. Is it going to open that hole for people and superstars to be able to start requesting their way out of situations? And where do you think this kind of leads from here?
Well, yeah, I think I'm surprised it doesn't happen more in the NHL where superstars request out, and I think we may start to see that more. But typically, when teams get like a pretty generational prospect or like top tier stars, they build teams around it, and they bring in players so at least they have a chance. I don't see many players being like dissatisfied. We had like rumblings of McDavid being that way this year, but like again, it's not the same.
And the only
level
one
as
I
other
can also
sports.
think of is what's his face in Vancouver, Connor Garland, who has talked about it
And
at the
again,
beginning of the year.
look at him
Now it's a solved
Look at him
situation. Correct.
Look at my boy Jake DeBrusk requesting trade out of Boston last year. It happens, but this is different. And then one thing I want to point out that I just verified dates wise, the Flyers drafted him 3 weeks after hiring Tortorella.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's not everyone wants to play for Torts. That's the reality of it. It's a
But
tough guy
again,
to play for.
They talked to him and he was willing to play. Like,
I know.
also, he's not really on the Torts timeline per se. He is, but like,
But you just never know. I mean, they're overachieving this
You know.
year, and you never know what could happen next year.
In going into this year, right, we were thinking to ourselves, what the hell is Torts doing in Philly?
Yep.
We were thinking to ourselves, this is not a win now team. He doesn't feel like the right fit. I think he's done a really great job over the last year and change.
Establishing a culture, to be honest.
Well, everybody expected him to establish a culture, but a lot of people speculated that it wasn't the right timing for that kind of, the Tortsisms with kind of a young group, a major rebuild. He's very much a win now coach. He likes veterans, consistency, et cetera. He's done a really great job. I think, reminding the hockey world, he's not a bad guy. He's not the devil. There have been a lot of awesome interviews with ex-players that really love Torts for his honesty, for his directness, for how upfront he is with his players. He's not a mind games guy. He's not. He's straightforward. You know where you stand. And I think guys that like good coaching like that. And to the other point about not everybody wants to play for Torts, this is a Stanley Cup winning coach. This is a proven track record guy, and you've done absolute jack shit in the National.
it's also like, what do you know? And then this is another part that I hate. He goes out and says there's this rumor that Kevin Hayes told him that,
Which has
Billy
been
was-
refuted
Yes,
in completely
by Kevin Hayes.
Yeah.
That part is maybe my least favorite part of this whole thing. is
No, that
he's
was
willing to go
the Philly media trying to drag Hazy into it.
I think it was just kind of fan Twitter speculation. But what do you got on that, Army?
I mean, we've
Well, I
seen
think
it
if
with
it's
Bedard's mom. So
If it's true, it's a horrible look. But like, I don't really need to speculate on that. Like, if it is true though, like, what are you doing? This like a Kevin Hayes maybe isn't what he could have been, but he's been a long NHL career guy. You got to respect him.
So, well, two things on the Hayes thing. One, it's just it's unfortunate he got dragged into it, and you hear about all the nasty messages he's gotten. That's tough, but I think he'll be able to get past that, right? I mean, he's gotten through a lot more in his life, right? And the other thing is he outright denied it, and he's towing that line. And there's nothing in Kevin Hayes' background that suggests that he's being dishonest about that. However, if he did have a private conversation with Gauthier about that, like if they did just, I don't know, maybe there was some kind of a PC thing,
right.
and they had, maybe they played golf at something when he was coming, who knows, right? And like they were kind of talking shop and just, getting the lay of the land. And like if that was part of this kid's mentality or thinking, that should be a private conversation. And the only two people that should know about that should be those two people.
Right.
So that's another point where, again, I don't think Kevin Hayes, I'll take his statements at face value. But even if they had that private conversation, that doesn't reflect poorly on Hayes. That reflects poorly on Gauthier throwing Hayes under the bus.
If I was Kevin Hayes, I'd deny it too and just say, sorry, dude. Why would you say that? Or why would that leak?
Right. And we don't, that's stuff that's obviously between them. Maybe it'll come out in time, but yeah.
overall, expectations of the trade. Where we
Well,
see
I have one other point here.
Okay.
About like how this went down. And Paulie says fire Briere.
Well,
I think
backtracked on
Paul.
that.
Yeah,
He backtracked.
Backtracked.
That was gut reaction.
I think so. My initial reaction was this kind of seems like Philly got fleeced. And that's because they're trading like a big name prospect at a time where he's pretty high. Coming off of World Juniors, like a time you don't see many prospects of this caliber get traded. You just don't.
He was one of the better players on this first round pick.
And Briere drafted him too. So like it's not like, oh, new regime. There's nothing that indicates. So then eventually you learn. But my bigger takeaway now is like, I think good on Briere and good on that organization essentially saying like, look, you don't want to be here, fine. I think it takes on some of the Torts mentality of like, if you want to be here, you're going to be here. And if not, we're ready to move on. He wasn't willing to get dragged into this and make it a saga. And I'm all about that. I think that's like a good move. And I've liked what Briere's done in so many ways so far. This is just another thing that would give me confidence if I'm a Philly fan. So good on him. It makes me think more of him again.
Just two comments in reverse order, right? Starting with the public comments from Philly and what you're hearing out of the Gauthier camp and how this has kind of gone down in the bitchy housewives of Philadelphia line, right? In the immortal words of Del Preston, nasty business, really. It's like Philly was in a position where like they had to
make a decision.
No, but regardless of the decision, they could have like I don't love the way that they've been so transparent about the kid not wanting to play there and kind of burying him. But at the same time, he fucked them, so they're fucking him. And it's like
a little taste of your own medicine.
And hashtag Han shot first, but it's like who started this, right? And it seems pretty obvious that Gauthier's camp are the ones that initiated the drama piece, and Philly played their part as a bit of we talked about cover your ass, CYA.
Yep.
As a part of that, as a part of like this new regime, one of Keith Jones's big responsibilities taking over hockey operations in Philadelphia at a really grim time for the franchise. It's about reestablishing their connection with their fan base and their position in the market. And so they were put in a position where they chose to do this publicly. And frankly, I don't love it, but I see where they're coming from.
How do you hide it though when you've got a guy who's the 5th overall pick?
I don't think it's really about hiding it, because in today's like media cycle where
there's no hiding.
It's not. Yeah, it's a 24-minute media cycle, not 24-hour media cycle. So they could have just announced the trade and got on with their business and just talked up Drysdale and the return and everything else. But they chose to make that to own that label of the situation, which it is what it is. I don't put them totally at fault. I don't love that though. It's a little bitchy to me. But
I just think they're protecting themselves.
Yeah,
I mean, GM is like front office is a public job. Public perception impacts how long you have your job.
Well, and
I'm long on quotes today. But Frank Reynolds, that's politics, bitch.
It is. I mean, I think it's a politics play and one they should have made. I'm fine with it.
And first reactions, I mean, they were all of, all right, well, Briere is out there to get us, and he's not in our best interest. But the reality is, with a little bit of time, a little bit more information,
it's true.
Things evens itself out.
And they probably also want their prospect base and the next guys that they draft to know that they're not eager to turn their backs on a top 5 pick that they make. So I get it. I just don't love the bitchiness. It's a little kind of gossipy for me, but I'm being a stickler there. The first point, Gauthier's makeup and how this went into it. What I tell you, the whole World Juniors watching this prancy around, prancy-dancy bunch of Susans, like the divas, the prima donnas, the celebrations, the blowing kisses, Mr. Fancy, look at me. These fucking USA Hockey superstar hot dogs, it is out of control. And this is just more evidence supporting my rants from last week.
I'm with you. And I think to Sif's earlier point about forcing trades, I would not be surprised. I think we may, in the future, in the pretty near future, have a situation where some of these U.S. NDTP guys want to get together and play together. And they try to form a team.
The whole NBA super team thing.
I think that could be if it's coming from somewhere, that's kind of where I think it's coming from.
You know what my first thought on it is? Good luck. Good luck splitting up the salary cap that way and producing a winning roster with 45 fucking Kyle Connors on the roster.
We'll talk about that later with a certain team that not necessarily Kyle Connors, but
anyway.
We'll get there.
So now to the trade, to the return.
Draisaitl goes to Anaheim.
It's not Draisaitl. It's Jamie Drysdale.
Drysdale goes to Philly with a second for a second pick in next year's draft.
So
for the forward.
All right, so on Jamie Drysdale, okay, he was the number 6 pick, right? So you trade a 5 in 2022 for a 6 in 2020, and Drysdale's player profile: undersized, really good skill, great skater, and a young career. He's been playing in Anaheim on some bad teams. So his NHL upside is still very much to be determined. He's dealt with some injuries, and he's kind of struggled in the games played category for that reason. So he's, in a way, a bit of a distressed asset. But I think everybody's been high on Drysdale.
They have.
And to further that, what is a little bit burying the lead here is what a move for Pat Verbeek.
Yes.
Mintyukov, this Russian defenseman that is all of a sudden, their best defenseman in Anaheim. I've talked about this Owen Zellweger kid that they have coming up, who he's Miro Heiskanen 2.0. They look the exact same way they play. I don't know if it's going to translate one for one, but that's the kind of high level ability they have coming up. And so with those two guys, you think about where Drysdale fits in. Cam Fowler's still going to play. Like, that's a little too much speed and skill on the blue line. They have a chance to kind of, bring in now a projected 30, 40 goal scorer in this Gauthier, who, again, we can bash as much as we want, but he's a highly skilled, competent hockey player who will fit right in with Zegras and Terry in that locker room. With Drysdale, we're all rooting for him, and I want him to become freaking Duncan Keith now.
Well, and it helps that he's still 21 years old. I know he's in his fourth.
21.
So he's in his fourth year, and as you mentioned, it has been injury riddled career so far, and you only hope for health, and that's where I think Philly's taking the bit of the gamble, is that they're saying, all right, well, hopefully if he stays healthy, he can reach that potential, and we're moving on from this distraction that they're not allowing into the locker room at this point.
And he's had injury issues, but his 181 game season.
He's good.
32 points on a bad team, right? Dash 26, you're not going to kill him over that.
On a
19-year-old defenseman on a terrible Anaheim team, you can't get crazy about that.
Correct.
But 32 points in 81 games as a young player, it's pretty exciting. And the eye test, I mean, the kid skates really well.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to this is a completely different team he's coming to, just how they play. It'll be interesting to see how he fits there.
And just for the Hockey DB has him at 5'11", 183. He doesn't look that small.
No.
But Hockey DB is also a little off. They have Jonathan Quick at 6'1".
Philly's site has him at 5'11", 185.
All right. So maybe that just is what he is. I mean, at 21, I guess you could beef up a little bit.
He is a thin kid.
But, yeah, I mean, we'll see.
Oh, and I think looking at the overall aspect of Philly and how he'll slot in, it's a bit of a different culture. It's a bit of a different vibe. You're coming into more of a hockey town. Not that the LA Anaheim area isn't, but
it isn't.
I'm trying to give him a little credit, but no, I think it's a win-win situation for Drysdale. We'll see what happens with Cutter. Zegras hurt last night, I believe, helped off the ice, so we'll see what happens on that continuous carousel. But the Flyers continue to roll. I wanted to bring up one Flyer player, unless we want to talk about it in loose change, and we've talked about it a little bit. But I saw a post on Instagram of Sean Couturier, and in the seasons he's healthy, and when he won the
Selke Trophy,
when he won the Selke, and then to come back in and be the guy he is, I think it's what has helped, without a doubt, has helped Philly be competitive, but also taken them to another step. So I want to give Sean Couturier the little most underrated player in the Eastern Conference right now.
It's a loose change topic. We'll get into the Masterton Trophy around then.
Okay. All right. Any final thoughts on the cutting the cord?
Drysdale debuts tonight.
Cord cutter. That'll be the title.
Moving on to
and I believe the on the cord cutter analogy, I believe Philly's owned by Comcast.
They are. I think majority.
That's it. There we go. All right.
Moving on to Toronto. The Toronto finally answered their one in-season question. That was Willy Styles, signing him to a 8-year, $92 million contract. The forward stays. The Swedish forward is not going anywhere, as he called it, his home, and it will be until at least 2032, as I think it is pretty strict in terms of the no trade clause movements. Boys, they locked down Willy Styles. The only questions I have about it is, you kind of expected him to be, especially with the production we've seen from him, to get this ticket. We all know Don Cherry is not happy about this one, but
I think Grapes has probably come around on Nylander a little bit.
You would have to think.
Just a little.
You would have to think. If he knows his hockey as much as he is, Willy Styles is a winning player.
Although, out of respect for Grapes, I could see him going down with the ship that Nick Ritchie's the better player. I could see him being in a take bunker on that. But
in terms of Nylander's comment, this has been a home for me. This is the longest I've ever spent in one place in my entire life. It's funny, the other day I was talking to a friend and I said, and then when we go home, and referring to Toronto without even thinking about it, this was home.
Yeah, I'm just going to cut the quotes off. They're all Buttercup quotes, and they're fine, and there's not much to drop.
And the reality is, there was speculation that how much was Michael Nylander into this conversation. Apparently, Willie has 2 agents. I didn't know this, but I guess Michael has signed whatever it needs to be a legal agent. But how much of it was potentially Nylander saying, or Michael saying, how much money, get as much money as you can. Don't wait
right.
for your worth.
Rusty swoop in here. Let's get back on the rails. First of all, we're not a math pod. That's $11.5 million AAV.
Yep.
His cap hit is $11.5 million for 8 years. That's the Pasternak contract. He's put up Pasternak points this year for the first time ever at age 28. So that's you're dealing high, right? There's no hometown discount involved. Mm-hmm. On Michael Nylander. Some of our listeners might not know, that's Willie's dad.
Correct.
Michael Nylander played in the NHL for about 15 seasons. He was known, and he played for a bunch of different teams because he was a harsh negotiator. And he represented himself. He's one of those guys that really advocated for himself, took the time. Again, he got certified as an agent at one point. I think he represented himself at times. And he's not formally his kid's agent. But again, that's the household, the advice. I think we know, everybody knows, from their own experiences, their family dynamics, but especially for a player, like for NHL players, it's just like, 98 out of 100 NHL players have a really close relationship with their dad because of the investment it takes, because, oftentimes they coach them at younger levels. They've been involved in their hockey careers. And in this case, he was raised in the house of Michael Nylander, which is, you are worth what you are worth, and you don't do anybody any favors. So this is not a hometown discount, and they're paying at the top of the market for their guy, but he's a hell of a player. And my just quick couple things on Nylander is he's a hell of a player, and he gets some of the Pasternak status of you can't bitch about his shortcomings because he just produces. He's been the most consistent playoff scorer of their core guys year after year. And I think personality-wise, a lot's made of the Toronto market. Some guys can handle it, some guys can't. Willie's got a bravado about him, and his no shortness of confidence with him, which you definitely want with that style of player. Gets along with his teammates, right? He's not like a hot dog, but like he is supremely confident, and he also is able to just handle the bullshit, let the Toronto media say what they say. Mm-hmm. It kind of flows right off his back, and he's not the kind of guy that'll get in his own head like their fucking goalie room. But that's what I got on that really quick. Army's got something to jump in on.
Yeah, then when everyone sees this, the initial reaction's like, how do you pay for other players at this point? Which is obviously like the concern. I also think it's a bit of an overpay. I don't think he's Pasternak. I don't think he's that good. I think he's one of the top 10 scorers in the league, but I don't think he's a top 5 one. Like, I don't think he's Kucherov either, Like, there's a little bit of a gap there, which when we're talking about that type of money, it matters a bit more. At the same time, and we discussed this with the Pasternak extension negotiations in the summer, you don't let a guy like that walk out the building. Mm-hmm. I think it's a very easy way to stay good is sign your best players and deal with everything else later. Draft well. Find some guys. But don't let William Nylander go to a different team. Like, just don't do it. Especially when he wants to play there. He may want money, but he wants to play there. Mm-hmm. Keep him.
And just as importantly, Arm, it's not he wants. It's he's capable of playing and succeeding in that market.
Totally. They have a proven Toronto player there. And now I know they haven't won enough, which is another reason that people are questioning it. But it's not like this team hasn't been great without the playoffs. Like, they are a contender every year. They've been there. Mm-hmm.
The playoffs are scary, but everything.
The playoffs are scary, but like, how many teams are trying to find a Matthews, a Nylander, a Marner?
Yeah.
and can't find them and can't make the playoffs because of that. Like, I think oftentimes we get like a little misguided in like what we're thinking. You know, our perspective shifts because they are so good. Keep them there, continue to be good, try to figure out the other pieces. That's not the problem. So I like it on that front. One thing that I do think has hampered Toronto's upside potentially over the next couple of years, and I heard this, like it was a tweet about this, and I think it's a really good point. Toronto has not done the prove it deal at all. They've shied away from the prove it deal, and pretty much all of their top prospects have worked over the past couple of years. So it's like if they tried the prove it deal a couple times, it would have been really good. Apparently, Nylander in the offseason was asking between $9 and $10 million for an extension when they were talking about it. They said, "Can you meet us at 8.5?"
And before this season started, Nylander's track record, right, was an 80, 90-point guy.
Yeah.
He's on pace for like 120 this year.
123. He went 80 in 2021, 87 in 2023, and is on pace for 123 this year. So it has been an upward tick.
We watched from the playoffs last year. You see his moments where you can see that 120-point player there. Like, it's not like that's a hidden concept that he could have been that. Like, I think everybody knew this guy was a pretty elite scorer, whether the points showed it or not.
Well, and to your point on the bridge deal, I mean, I think he kind of took one at the time. I mean, I know 5-2 was a lot for him at the
but
point.
He hadn't really shown anything.
I'm not talking about a bridge deal. I'm talking the 7-7, you know, the 7-8 mil a year, you know, like what Sanderson got, what Boldy got. Those deals Toronto has shied away from.
That's
and
fair.
they've waited to give them the mega deals.
Well, and now they're in the situation.
So they've kind of lived off the prove it deals, and they've had to deal with you've proved it.
Yeah. And that's where we're seeing it. I mean, now they've
instead of the unproven deals, what you're really talking about, where you basically you pay a premium based on past performance that is not what they expect, but you pay a premium that is greater than prior proven ability, but less than future upside, and you try to have that value range while the guy's somewhere between 22 and 27, right?
Yeah, I mean, imagine they locked Matthews up for like a 10-year, like I don't know, or an 8-year. 10 a year deal, something like that. Like that $1.5 million saves a lot of cash.
3.5 for Matthews.
3.5, but like they could have made pretty lucrative offers before they were there. Matthews was tough because he was such a huge prospect, you know, and like that's a little different. But Nylander's a guy who, like, even this past offseason, they could have paid him 9 to 10, and that would have made a big difference. But you know, they see the jump now. I like the move. Keep him there.
And to your point about waiting and at least Toronto waiting, you know, I think that they were in the midst of obviously a GM change and things changing in the front office. And I think they needed to see, you know, yes, you had 2 years of him in the 80-point range. I think they were still waiting on a little bit of that, you know, I guess prove it. And that's exactly what he's done. And now the money's talking. Toronto now has 3 forwards above the $11 million mark. One of them expires after next season, being John Tavares. You still have Mitch Marner, who is due for a contract not this year but the year after. So it's, I mean, you got 13.25 committed to Matthews. You've got now 11.5 committed to Nylander. You got 11 next year committed to Tavares. I mean, it's a lot tied up to 3 guys, and that it makes cuffing a decision potentially at the deadline or trying to add pieces. It's going to make it very tough for this team to make moves.
And I did the back of the napkin sketch there. So that's roughly $54 million tied up with those 3 forwards and Morgan Riley. They're one good defenseman. And just to be clear, right? Nylander's number will not be on the books until next year, right? It's an extension, right? So he's playing under
kicks in next season. Yeah.
So starting next year, when the cap's expected to be $87 million, that leaves them $33 million to fill out their remaining 15.
Do you have
15
Marner
guys?
On there?
Correct. Yeah,
10-9 next year.
That's right. So that means the bottom 3/4 of your roster are coming in at an average annual value of $2.2 million.
And
roughly, right? So again, we're not going to nerd out and get you the exact numbers, but you know, it is what it is. It's a bit of a classy problem, right? I think a lot of teams would kill for that much high-end skill locked up.
But then again, you've never seen a team commit that much money to their core to that extent.
Not to quite this level, but you've seen teams do this. A lot of good teams have done similar things where they have 4 big contracts.
Well, the other thing is, like, in the NHL, like the salary cap era, right? It's 17 years old, something like that. It's not like the history of the NHL is 5 times that. So this is sort of, I don't want to say a first of its kind. You're seeing some versions of it in Edmonton, right, where Draisaitl's coming up, and that's going to be a whopper.
Yep.
And so it's a balance that teams that strike gold in the draft have to deal with. Toronto's no different. So on the deal, I think I agree with Arm. You can't let Nylander walk. To me, this puts Mitch Marner in the crosshairs. This postseason for Marner, I think Marner's playing for his Leafs' future this postseason.
Oh, and I think it puts a pretty, I think Toronto fans would say, the Tavares saga has been fun. I think that ends.
However, I disagree. I don't think Tavares is going to leave
you
Toronto.
Take a hometown discount.
I do, because he's made so much money. But the thing is, he's a point-a-game player.
I understand that, but you
What
can't
is
commit
the
5.
discount?
That's what I'm saying.
Probably
You got
6.
TJ Brody's up next year. He was making 5 this year. He is 33, so I think we'll see where that money goes. You've got.
I think what they'll sign Tavares will be something like a front-loaded, 6x3. So it's like it goes something like 8-6-4, something like that.
So he's 40.
I mean.
Yeah.
If he can play that long, I mean, he's proven. You talk about consistency.
Yep.
So
I also think I think you're going to see Toronto become a little bit of a retirement home for a lot of guys too. Like, there's going to be a lot of guys who come on 1-year deals.
It's been going on for a while.
I know, but I think it's going to become more extreme because
we got Spezza, Wayne Simmons, Joe Thornton.
you're going to see this more and more. Though.
Mark Giordano.
Well, Bertuzzi's gone next year, right?
Bertuzzi is, but this is another thing that they are cap negotiators. I don't know what exactly they do. I don't understand the cap too well, but they had $2 million cap space and signed Bertuzzi to a $4 million deal.
To a $5 million.
Yeah, they didn't have the cap space,
right?
And they did it. I don't understand how that always works.
So you need to be cap compliant, or you pay the fines or fees. You can lose draft picks too. So that's the price of being over the cap. But you're allowed to be over the cap when your team's not playing. And also in the playoffs, right? Playoffs are cap. Is a cap dead zone. So they were over the cap in the offseason, but by the time camp ended and before week 1, they had money coming off the books with injuries and Jake Muzzin and those other things. So they're paying a lot. Their out of pocket expenses on the roster exceed the salary cap.
I can tell you what
significantly, but they're one of the richest teams in the league, right? They're the Dallas Cowboys of hockey.
Yeah. Relief wise, they've got $14 million on the books. They have 34,000 remaining of
nothing. They're up against it. But
I would just say I trust them to understand what they're getting into cap situation wise. I think you're right about Marner. I think they must be confident that they can put competent players around these guys, and I think they can. But also it's going to come down to draft some good players here. Drafting good players helps so much in any sport, but when you do this to yourself, you need development.
Well, and we talked about Nyes getting hurt today. I mean, he's up in 2 years.
It's funny we talk about Nyes. Nick Robertson
he's
is
up
the
this
guy,
year.
right? So but Nick Robertson's that cheap entry level contract. Who's supposed to be a high end guy that they're getting for. Yeah, he's
about 800.
But at this point in his career, he's in the neighborhood of 40, 50 points. I think if he played 82. And with Nyes going, we don't know what that is. It looked ugly, but we don't know. It literally happened minutes before the pod. But Robertson's going to be a big piece of the rest of this team's story this year. There's been a lot of talk about him being a trade chip and how to use him, but it depends. I think a big part of that depends on what the deal is with Nyes, and they might just hang on to Robertson, and then that might be an offseason. It kind of there's a lot up in how Robertson looks, and I think he's probably going to be slated to get some big time top 6 minutes, especially if Nyes is out long term, which unfortunately it looks like he's going to.
The only after practice, the word on Nyes' condition was positive. We're not going to know more until Thursday, but it looks good. Leafs coach Sheldon Keefe said he's not ruled out for the game in New York against the Islanders.
That's good.
And go back to our Winnipeg Jets contracts and extension forecast, and then it happened like 48 hours later. SLOTSHOT's now 0-3 with Willie for Taves. So whatever, we don't have a crystal ball, folks.
No, we do not. Toronto locks down Willy Styles. Moving on. Rusty, you got something about the worm?
Return of the worm. This isn't going to be forever, but there's obviously talk about the Real Housewives of the NHL and all the drama and speculation stuff, right? So Corey Perry was dishonorably discharged, you might say, from the Chicago Blackhawks for conduct unbecoming of a Chicago Blackhawk, I guess. And there's a lot of speculation about what it specifically was. Perry, what he said, he went into treatment stuff. Did he say that publicly or no?
No.
Okay.
Just said he owned up to something.
Yeah. He said I fucked up. And so we were thinking to ourselves, well, geez, we don't want to jump all over this because it could be something really bad, and we don't want to have our necks out for that. But if it's not something really bad, Chicago and now it's proof because he met with Bettman, he's been reinstated, now he's a pure UFA. So what Chicago just did, Jack, you need to accept this as a fact, is because of the skeletons in Chicago's closet as an organization, they felt it was in their best interest to be proactive and in this case prematurely overly cautious in severing ties with a guy that I believe they signed purely to help the room, be a mentor for Bedard, but to shop at the trade deadline. Corey Perry is a playoff player. We've seen it 4 out of the last 5 years. He's been in the Stanley Cup final, for God's sake. He plays an awesome fourth-line role on a cup contender. Power play 2, you can move him into power play 1. He's still one of the best net front guys. He's so valuable in a playoff series. You just forfeited the draft pick compensation you could have got for Perry because your history of negligence in these areas. So to me, that's the story, and now I'm really excited to see where Perry goes. Go ahead, Jack.
I understand what you're saying, and I understand what the Hawks have put themselves into that situation because of what has happened in the years past, and I understand that. We still don't know what happened. We're not probably.
But we know it wasn't bad.
We don't know what happened. That's all I'm going to say about it. Did they lose him for free? Yes, they absolutely did, and there's no arguing that, and that's the reality of it.
So this event never happens. This event never happens. What do you think he goes for at the deadline with the year that he started?
With what he was having, maybe a high third.
Third round pick's the best you're gonna get.
Second, if a team's super desperate, and it would be a high second.
Some of these deadline prices are crazy.
Oh, I mean, we saw, yes.
But they're typically for younger players, like the old 1 year rental.
Oh, that's where I'm curious about what happens.
I think at best you're getting a second. There's no chance you're getting a first.
No, not a first, but a second's a big deal. Look
for
at
Perry,
the Drysdale move.
Yes. No, I mean, but that's where I look at like Nick Foligno. He has had such an awesome year, and it's built in so well.
But Foligno's got a higher cap number.
No, but my point is, at 36, is it a guy who wants to sign, be the leader for the next few years, retire off into the sunset, or is it a guy who wants to go and win a Stanley Cup? That's the decision they're going to make, and that's where it's going to be. We'll find out what a guy like that is worth, because I think if they do move on from a Foligno,
probably have similar values.
But
a little bit more.
And we are a Corey Perry podcast.
The only thing I wanted to say about the Perry situation in terms of the Bettman meeting is that he didn't actually need to meet with Bettman to clear him, because he didn't bar him from playing in the first place. But on Perry's side, he did request the meeting and wanted to meet with the commish, and they're all on the same page, and he is now allowed to sign a UFA contract before March 8th to make him eligible for this year's playoffs.
I'm excited to see where he signs. Somebody will sign him.
Any interest in Detroit?
I mean, I wouldn't mind it, but I wouldn't mind it for the only reason that our young kids aren't going to come up anyways. Like, I don't really like the plod.
Grand Rapids is chasing that Cedar.
It seems
Calder
like we
Cup.
want Grand Rapids to win Calder Cup, yeah. In the sense that I already know that's going to happen, I wouldn't mind him coming in, but there's not really a roster spot for him.
And you're getting that production at Perron, right? Pretty much.
Yeah, Perron's better.
Totally, right. But my point is, that's the role, kind of.
Yeah, we don't really need Corey Perry, but I could see a lot of teams looking at him.
My thing with Boston is I love Perry, and he's the dream guy, but we're actually getting Corey Perry production out of Van Average. Jonathan Van Riemsdyk, or or James Van Riemsdyk. So unless Van Riemsdyk, goes down between now and deadline, I think Boston's off the table.
I do think there's a lot of teams that would look. I could see Toronto looking at him.
Every playoff team.
Yeah, I think a lot of teams will look.
Oh my God, Toronto could use him.
He'd be great there,
and he would sign. I think he would sign in Toronto
unless they're afraid. Unless they're afraid in Toronto of blowback and what could come out.
Well, that's where. Thank you. I mean, again, we don't know what happened. I'm not dismissing the fact that the Hawks put themselves in the situation where they had to just kind of cut ties at that time. Is that end up going to be the right situation? We just don't know what happened.
Well, we know that they forfeited their compensation because they could have just scratched him,
right?
Communicated, made sure that they did everything legally. They could have delayed it, stalled it, been more thoughtful about it. Instead, they acted rashly, and they cost themselves a third or fourth round pick.
I'm curious to see is if Perry files a grievance for the contract and wants to get that $4 million that he potentially.
I'm sure
in most cases, in almost 100% of the cases, the NHLPA wants him to file that grievance because they don't want something to be set of a precedent.
If you have suffered a workplace injustice, contact the law offices of Sif, Armour, and Matthews.
I'll be the realistic one. These two will fight tooth and nail for you. I guarantee you that.
You want us on that wall. You need us on that wall.
Any final thoughts on the Worm returning to play?
No, it'll be a storyline where he signs though. We'll cover it then.
I'm debating Cord Cutter and Return of the Worm for the pod title, but we'll deal with that offline.
You'll find out tomorrow when this podcast is posted. Moving on, I want to talk about my Cup favorite, my Cup pick, the New Jersey Devils. Looking at their record, 21-15-2. It's not a bad record by any means, but it has fallen for them for 5th in the Metro Division. Latest news that Jack Hughes is going to hit the shelf. They did avoid apparently a major injury. I didn't see the play because at this point I think it happened late in the third period, but it sounded like he'll be out on the injured reserve for a few weeks. But this team, I mean, we're already talking about a team that lost Dougie Hamilton for potentially the start of the playoffs. It's a team that, yes, they've had good performances from their young guns, but we've talked about the Timo Meier acquisition not paying off. We've talked about a few things with this New Jersey team. I mean, goaltending has been very shaky. They've sent down, like we talked about, Schmid to the AHL. It's now Vanacek and Dawes, Nico Dawes in net for them. But the New Jersey Devils, it's been a little bit of a struggle fest, and they've lost. It's been, I don't know. From what I expected, from what we saw in the playoffs last year, it looked like this team was building, and it seemingly seems like the momentum has found a level ground. We got to bring in potentially Trainer on at least get Trainer's thoughts on this one. But boys, the New Jersey Devils and 5th in the Metro Division.
Yeah, I mean they've been dealt a tough hand with injuries. There's no doubt. I mean, it seems like 2 months ago they were missing Hersher and Hughes for a long stretch. Mm-hmm. Dougie goes down. Meyer's now hurt. Siegenthaler went down. It's tough to continue to be good with that amount of injuries.
We've got Dougie Hamilton, Nosek, Meier, Palat, Siegenthaler, Hughes.
Yeah, the Palat deals had an unfortunate beginning.
And Palat, I was just looking at Palat, 14 points in 35 games.
It's always played, though, in 2 years now. A year and a half.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if they're dead. They have a really good team still, but it's a pretty tight race. They just have to have like upgraded production from somewhere. My issue is like, and this has kind of been my issue with this team, I guess. Jack Hughes, when they're playing well, it's Jack Hughes, mm-hmm. and he's running the show, and he just looks like he's the main force mm-hmm. of everything. And they have other good players, but it doesn't seem like they're that good without him. And I don't know if they can withstand another Hughes injury. They say weeks, not months, but that could mean 3 weeks,
Right. No, yeah, so, absolutely. No, and I mean, we've talked about, Jesper Bratt and Hughes are tied for 45 points leading this team in the scoring department. I think, people of New Jersey have been asking the questions of, yes, Dawson Mercer has 12 goals and 8 assists, but they're hopeful that he could produce and step up in this role with at least Hughes hitting the shelf. But it's going to put a lot of pressure on Jesper Bratt. What I will say, because I think Ross was on it with Simon Nemec, it opens up for Nemec and Hughes to be the number one D pairing for this Devils team, at least on daily faceoff. So it's interesting stuff. Obviously, the lineups change and things are shifted. But Rusty, what do you got on the Devils?
Well, Nemec or Nemitz or however they pronounce it, right? He's all reports are that he's looked pretty solid.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. When I've watched, he's been quiet, which is oftentimes
for a young defenseman, it's great,
and a large young defenseman too. At 19 years old, right? So that's pretty solid, and that's exciting, big picture. But this is supposed to be a cup year, mm-hmm. And so what I just pulled up is their schedule. Holy hell! And I didn't even know what I was exactly looking for. You want to see their schedule the rest of January?
Sure.
Lightning Thursday night, Panthers Saturday night. Bruins Monday matinee, Dr. Nice. Martin Luther King Jr. They get the Habs, who've been tough and are higher than them in the fucking standings.
Yep.
They get a night off in Columbus, playing the Blue Jackets. But then it's Dallas, Vegas, Carolina Lightning.
And then Colorado again. I mean, it's a tough slate. And to bring up Tampa, I mean, they're 1 point behind in the wild card chase. I got to see what the points percentage looks like. But, yeah, I mean, that's a tough stretch of hockey, especially to have your number one scoring talent on the shelf.
So, I mean, what's the injury with Meyer right now? Do we know?
Let me go to the...
I'm not sure.
We're not sure. Okay, we don't need to do it live.
We don't need to find out. But the other thing I will say that could actually be good for them, they need a goalie, and this goalie market is brutal for teams that need a goalie. I mean, they're overpaying for guys that just... They will be. We'll see if... But, like, that's kind of what the market is. Teams know if they have a good goalie.
Peter Mrazek would look good in jersey colors.
Yeah, but now they don't have to enter that debate for... Like, that's what I'm talking about. Peter Mrazek is a proven not that good goalie in the NHL. Who's having a good year.
Yeah.
The fact that people are like talking about trading for him is crazy to me, but that's what the market is.
And you know what's scary, Arm, is the Habs are doing all right. Allen might be teetering off the trade market.
Well, they re-signed those two guys.
They have 3 goalies.
I'm not even going to try and...
They're carrying 3 good
try
goalies.
it. Primo and the other guy, I can't even pronounce his name.
That's all right. Don't try.
Yeah, but like there's you're paying for an average goalie that's playing well right now. That's what's happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think Jersey's going to go in and look and be like, let's go acquire some guy. Let's go trade a piece.
Well, that's where, you're looking at it. I mean, 5th in the Metro. You've seen the injuries. You know you're not going to have your number one D back until basically the start of the playoffs. Do you really go risk the biscuit for trading for a goalie, or do you kind of let this one play out, see if you can refine?
That's my point.
I think you just kind of I think you got to see what happens and just let your cards on the table play.
But is Hughes going to get back before the trade deadline?
Hughes?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're being pretty.
Yeah. We're looking at he should be playing by in February.
Okay. But still, my point would be
significant, especially with that stretch arm.
Yes,
right.
Yeah.
That's about 10 games.
They could be out of the playoffs, trying to climb back in
2 weeks, 3 weeks,
and
basically.
And where they sit in the standings right now, they are firmly at the top of the wild card on a points percentage basis, but they're tied right neck and neck with Washington and with Pittsburgh, basically. And then you've got Tampa and the Islanders who have games in hand that are ahead of them. So that's just a big slog of teams that they're gonna. This January is a huge January for the New Jersey Devils.
Yep. No, I agree with you, and it makes me worried for my Stanley Cup final pick of Vegas and New Jersey.
Sorry, I was wrong. Montreal's not ahead of them in the standings. I apologize.
But no, it's been concerning signs from the New Jersey Devils. Any final thoughts on the Devils?
I just want to also just bury the Habs for a second. Jake Allen will be on the trade market. 39 points in 39 games.
I think so.
Yeah, they're out of the picture.
Moving on. Loose change. We're back to loose change. We had an interesting week last week as we obviously covered some of the games from the week and a half about what we missed, given we recorded on Saturday. So we'll cover a little bit of Saturday's slate, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Boys, who wants to lead us off on loose change?
Yeah, I got some stuff. So I crammed in a good amount of hockey as I'd been gone, so I was excited to watch. Had a Wings game Sunday night, which was pretty fun. Wings at Ducks.
Took a nice snooze during that one.
Yes, Jack was asleep next to me.
Passed out. I was tired.
And so yeah, I was watching Wings Ducks. Couple notes from this. It started to get like a little physical because Larkin gets a cross check, like just a crunching cross check from McTavish in front. A play that seemingly repeats over and over. And he goes to the. I mean, it's just unbelievable how many times this guy gets like a mid-lower back cross-check that,
It's the NHL versus Dylan Larkin.
It just seems like it happens more often to him. Nobody else on the Red Wings gets this.
Army, Michigan versus everybody, dude.
Exactly. So, yeah, that happens. He goes to the locker room, so everyone's a little bit riled up all of a sudden. He ends up coming back, so nothing serious.
Before or after he scored? I think he scored on that power play.
No, this was
later.
He went to the locker room.
Gotcha.
So
Let's get back on the rails.
Keep it rolling.
So yeah, he goes to the locker room. Later in the game, to end the period, Radko kind of has like...
I was waiting for Radko.
Radko's a big factor in this game. So he comes in, it's like there's like a second left, and he fires a shot on that, like kind of like in the zone, but he fires a shot. And Lucas Raymond's just standing there. Radko decides to go slew foot him. I don't know why. Lucas Raymond hadn't like done anything like edgy at this point, but Radko goes with a slew foot that includes like just kind of a hammer stick elbow throw around at him. which doesn't catch him, but it looks like crazy. And you don't really get the full play before it exits the camera, but then you get the replay and it's just like clear slew foot, so he goes to the box.
Only thing I'd say for Radko is he caught an edge, a lot of body to control, maybe lost control, but no, I mean it wasn't a pretty
Sif
look.
was watching the slew foot live and he was trying to justify.
I gotta defend our mites. I mean he's a loyal one.
If anyone deserves the benefit of the doubt in a dirty
freaking
play,
Radko.
it's Radko Gudas.
Thank you.
I'm not against
I was missing my Rusty in this moment.
I was also just a little confused why he went out of it. He just saw Lucas Raymond, a guy that doesn't really warrant slew foots very often.
Yeah, that was sarcasm for you Midwestern listeners.
I'm aware, but it was just funny because Lucas Raymond's literally just standing. The period's over. He's just standing there, and it's like, why that guy out of all people?
Oh, Radko would get his taste of his own medicine. So
karma comes later in this game.
Oh boy.
So Radko starts getting roughed up throughout the game now. Now, including one point, Rasmussen grabs his visor and is shoving his visor. I've never seen that.
They move a lot.
I know, but he gets his fingers between the helmet and the visor, and he's just got a hold of the visor.
I heard that's actually a penalty if you grip around the visor. It's kind of like NHL's face masking.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised.
But it's also hard to.
This was
it's very dangerous.
Yes.
That thing could come down and cut you across the teeth.
It was just like a net front scrum, though. It might be a penalty. I don't know,
but if you're in a scrum and you grab a guy by the visor, I believe, whether it's in the rules or not, I believe that's like a closing your hand on the puck kind of
There was no call. It was
Anyway.
just kind of rough up, and he continues to just kind of take shots to the face throughout any net front. They're just kind of not punching, just kind of throwing a fist in the face.
So he's got the beard, It's kind of like the natural. It's kind of like the natural broken jaw protector thing.
And I'll give him credit. He didn't really stand up for himself. He just kind of ate a lot of these.
Love it.
It was just standing there looking at people eating them. So that was pretty funny. But then
get to the great moment.
Anaheim goes for what I'm calling the new Dean Evison penalty kill. It was pretty close. A little bit farther out, but they were running that same penalty kill. Let's just eat shots all day. Unfortunately for Radko,
makes me sick thinking about this.
One timer straight to the nuts. I mean, and he goes down, and everyone's like, "Oh shit!" Like nobody was even the Red Wings were like, "Oh no."
You generally don't see the play stopped for one of these. They let it go for about 5 seconds, right in the nuts. You don't necessarily see it quickly, but they stop the play quickly on this one.
And I mean, let's be real. Radko's definitely got a big beanbag on him. That's a big target.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason to avoid it. The cup didn't protect it all.
He might need a goalie cup.
Yeah. So that was tough for Radko. I haven't heard that he's injured, so he's probably fine. But it looked like a brutal shot to take.
Yeah, he's sitting on ice bags this week.
Yeah. So that's the Radko saga.
Sorry, Mrs. Gudas.
Yeah, but that was a pretty fun game. It looked like it was really going to blow up. It didn't end up getting too out of hand.
What was Kane's unsportsmanlike for? Did you see it?
Oh yeah, Kane got it. Was
curious,
it was just a horrible call. He's playing with one of the defensemen on the skate back to the bench, and they're yelling at each other, grabbing each other's sticks.
Interesting.
And they called Kane. It was a pretty soft call. I think unbiasedly, it was just what even happened.
Anaheim, I mean, they had 4 chances in that second period, and I think maybe capitalized on one of them. But the Zegras show was the only thing that showed up on that night for Anaheim, scoring 2.
Yeah, I don't think Anaheim looks bad actually. I think they're showing some good signs there. John Gibson was very good.
Drysdale had an assist in this one before his departure.
And only other note I have from this is just Andrew Kopp is one of the worst players in the league. This guy's I'm surprised by it, but every time he doesn't do anything of value ever. The only thing he's good at is the penalty kill. Him and Comfer have a good penalty kill worked out.
Is he at $4 million or $5 million?
4.5, I think. But he just he has no offensive game, and the defensive game is bad too, except for on the penalty kill, which is good. But he's a negative out there. He's probably the worst player on the team.
Do you take back the tinted visor? Do you make him wear a clear one?
He might not earn it because we have the most tinted visors in the league, and I like most of them. But he's just been I don't see anything good that he does on the ice ever. He's just a passenger most shifts.
You hate that.
6 this year, 6'2" this year, 6'2" next year, 5'7", 4'3".
Yeah,
a lot of money.
It's a brutal contract.
So that's 5.5 AAV, right?
Yeah, it's looking terrible for a guy who never produced. So
I mean, the most you saw from him was almost 40 points in 21 from
I know.
When he was with Winnipeg.
But I also was I knew last year was bad coming off hip surgery. Sometimes that happens,
He's another hip guy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And he's not Patrick Kane. He's just
Who won the game?
Wings won the game.
Wait,
Rasmussen kicking.
Sorry, what was Kane's unsportsmanlike?
Just bitching.
Bitching at the ref?
Yeah.
No,
bitching with another player.
They were just skating to the bench, kind of shoving each other, but not nothing happened. Nobody was upset. They both go to the bench and they call Kane. I don't know if something else happened there. that you couldn't see from the broadcast, but it looked like that most nothing play you've ever seen.
Was it like the game was out of hand and the ref was like, "Fuck Kane"?
No, it wasn't. Like I thought it was gonna get out of hand, but there wasn't even like shoving to the face or anything. They were just kind of skating side. It was weird.
Yeah,
I think
especially on a guy
something
like
might have
Kane.
happened on the ice.
Yeah, he probably said something to that ref earlier that really got under him.
Yeah, I don't know. Kane continues to look good.
Okay.
Had a really nice takeaway. He just I don't really get it because we talked about this track record of this injury. He doesn't seem to be suffering at all from that.
No, I'll be the first to say he looks like he's fully healthy and
he looks great.
And the fact that he feels comfortable. That's a big thing.
Oh, the other game note: Wings power play has been adjusted, which does include Larkin moving to the second unit, which makes them a lot better. The second unit, but now Kane has 2 weapons on the power play.
Is Kane playing the point or is he playing the where's
He's playing half wall on the right. The Brinkhead on the left, obviously mucking it up, dangerous, but they've added in a second option for Kane on the 1T. Spronger playing the bumper. And it is crazy.
Sprung in the bumper.
Sprung in the bumper. So now they have these 2 weapon shots. I love the move. Wow. The 2 best shots on the team are sitting there for Kane to feed them, and it's pretty good stuff. I think there could be a little hot stretch here.
I want to say this: the bumper position in the umbrella power play units, to me, I think that's the most pivotal and the most difficult role on the unit. And like Boston's had great power plays for Bergeron's a bumper. That just makes everyone so much better. Whether it's being able to catch and release that quick shot in traffic in a tight space, or just literally doing the bumping and having the team collapse on you, and then you're creating lanes elsewhere as the PK is kind of sprawling. So very good for Spronger stepping into that role.
Well, the big thing,
because I could see Sprong catching and shooting. I don't know how much bumping out he's going to be doing, but you tell me.
No, he just shoots. But the reason he's there is because Larkin's a lefty and he's a great bumper. He scored a bumper on the second power play unit this game, but he's a lefty. So when Kane has that puck there, that one-timer is not open. Mm-hmm. And now Kane they're just essentially just saying, Kane, you got 2 options. And now DeBrincat was getting more shots because they got to cover 2 of them. So I think it's just a pretty logical, sound decision. So I'm excited to watch that more. We all know I love Daniel Sprong, so this is just great for me.
Oh, and
Bing bong.
Close it up on the Wings. This was their last game, and they play again Thursday back from their West Coast trip versus Edmonton tomorrow night. But this is a little stretch that they needed. I think they finally have put at least 3 or 4 together.
They swept the West.
And
3 games, but they swept it, which is huge.
No, and you needed it. I mean, we talked about it. I know you were gone, and we talked a little bit about the Wings, and they're climbing themselves back into that Atlantic Division, 5th there. But like we talked about with the Devils, I mean, there's a lot of teams they got to climb to find themselves in the wild card.
But right now they're tied for points with the last team in the wild card. I forget. There's 4 teams at 44.
They're part of that muck, yeah.
So it's totally in play, but they had a comeback win against the Kings last week. That
the Kings
third period comeback against the Kings in LA is tough.
Kings are hitting their first real stumble of the year.
And the Wings took advantage,
which I love.
Mm-hmm. We know you're on that train.
What are you seeing out of the Kings as far as weaknesses? Because when they're buzzing, they're so structured, they're so heavy, they're so deep, and their D does enough. Did you see anything that stood out in any of those games?
So I didn't watch this full game, but I think my only issue with the Kings, potentially, but I don't really see it, is I don't know if they have the true A1 scoring threat.
You mean outside of their first line?
Their first line's great, but they don't have a 90-point player. And Kempe's getting close to that.
Fiala.
Kempe's good. But Kempe's more, Fiala can be that, but he doesn't get the opportunities. I just don't see, they don't have the top-end firepower, and they make up for it.
They do. I mean, they have the best line in the league.
I get it. I'm not saying the Kings are bad. I'm saying they don't have elite scoring. They just don't. They score a lot of goals, but they get it from a lot of places, which you could argue is better.
It's Fiala. I mean, Fiala's their answer to that because they're such a grinder roster.
I'm with you. I feel like you're being defensive about the Kings.
I am.
I'm not trying to say that, but when you ask a weakness about one of the most complete teams in hockey, it's that they don't have a 90-point scorer on the roster.
Fair enough.
And when you need a 90-point, there's moments where you really like having that.
My concern,
just wrapping that quote, right? Quote. You need a 90-point scorer. I'm of the mind the teams that have the most guys with 10 to 20 goals or the most guys with 20 to 40 points, those are the teams that you look out for.
I know, but my quote was when you need a 90-point scorer. It's not that you need one to win, but there's moments in games where you want somebody to just pull something out of their ass.
Hey.
They don't have that, I don't think. Always. Very good team.
You talk about what could be a weakness. Do you trust Cam Talbot the rest of the way. I mean, they just lost Phoenix Copley for a torn ACL for the year. I know he'd really adapted to that backup role.
Yeah.
But him and David Rich? I don't know how to say it.
Rittich maybe. But the Kings goaltending situation, it's not the strength of their team, but it's not their weakness. If that becomes a crisis, they'll have to address it. But they play well, and like when they're playing great, it feels like any two goalies could step in there and be in the Jennings Trophy race.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't seem like they give many high danger opportunities.
Hence,
they're pretty solid.
Cam Talbot, .922 save percentage.
Yeah, and he's played well. You don't get that without playing well.
Yeah.
Okay,
Keep
couple
it rolling.
other ones. Chernak took a big hit last night, and I'm convinced of this. Chernak just eats big hits. I mean, pretty regularly the guy eats big hits. I think it's because he's so big, he's not afraid of any hits, so he doesn't need to brace for it or avoid it. So he ends up eating some. But I've seen a lot of huge hits that he's taken, and he's such a big dude. That was really my note on that. The guy just gets pummeled with a decent frequency.
Chernak is like such.
I love the player,
and he's such a warrior. He's such a lunch pail guy. He's so important to that team. My only point on that is Tampa's struggling, and they're a one-line offensive team. Defensively, it's just Hedman, Sugar, and Chernak, and it's like. They are absolutely in one. My John Cooper, Jack Adams Trophy pick. It's going to require some second half heroics. I think it's still alive. I'm not out of that take bunker yet. But Chernak is such an important piece for them. So, I think the path for Tampa is health, Vasilevsky going hero mode, and I don't even know what the trade chest, what the war chest cupboard of picks and prospects to deal from is after they've dumped it all out the past handful of years. I don't know if any help's coming at the deadline, especially if they remain where they are.
Worm return?
Return of the Worm to Tampa.
But also would be a huge change. That doesn't get them over the hump.
I think it's an incremental help. I think it definitely helps in a postseason series, of course, but that's interesting. I could see it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, couple more. This was actually more of a takeaway. I watched a little Ducks Preds last night. Don't know why, but I did. I think there was some intermission going on.
Confirmed in the building on Saturday, though. So we'll get the review for the Bridgestone this weekend.
I'm excited about it.
Quiet Tuesday in the Arm House.
But what I took away more, again, Ducks takeaway here, they have a pretty good press, and they skate hard. I was the amount of times they had a lot of guys back on plays, I was pretty impressed with, and I don't think I recognized it as much in the Red Wings game because sometimes I just get focused on the Red Wings, and I was like, why can't they do things? But I think the Ducks actually play for their roster makeup, they play pretty good defensive hockey.
For a 14-25 in one team, they're better than maybe the record.
They're not like a pushover when it comes to giving up goals, which I kind of had the idea that they were because they're the Ducks. So that was one there. I don't know if you guys have anything on that.
Mike, did Gibson play?
No, Dostal.
Is Gibson part of that?
That could
goalie
be. That's the question.
Totally.
He's opening up. I think he's coming up pretty soon.
His stats are pretty dog shit the last couple of years, but I think everybody recognizes he's a good goalie. And
he was great in the Detroit game.
Okay. So that's my only thought.
But he's totally in that.
We talked a lot of Ducks today.
Oilers Hawks. So I had my
Edmonton.
I had something to watch for before the game, and I was as impressed as I was expecting. They have made a change right now. Evander Kane's been bumped down to the third line. They are playing Fogle and McLeod with Draisaitl.
Interesting.
It's awesome.
It's actually a lot of speed.
And you know what I love about it? These two are grinders. They get after pucks. They love shooting. But what it gives Draisaitl the ability to do, and it's what was pretty much happening all game when they were on the ice, those two fly into corners, and Draisaitl gets to play that roaming.
Can sit back a little bit, let the puck come to
sit
him.
around.
It's the patience, and it's finding the soft spots in the pockets, right?
Exactly. So he gets to sit around. They get the puck for him, and he's now sprung into a position because of their hard work. And then you couple that, they're both willing shooters. And that's a concept that, it seems like it should be. I think in beer league we see a lot of willing shooters. In the NHL, there's a lot of passive players, you know, who are looking to make that extra pass and who don't want to shoot the puck. These guys with Draisaitl, I was looking at the stats. They're getting 4 or 5 shots on goal a game.
Good prop bet opportunities, gamblers.
Yep.
It is right now because they're getting fed, they're getting puck possession, and they're willing to shoot. So I really like that line.
I think that's a great observation. That is a huge development if that sticks, right? If that sticks. We see line combos shift around, and we know that that's not permanent necessarily. But if that sticks and that can balance them out a little bit, that's what Edmonton's been dying for, and getting the elevated play out of guys like Foegele and McLeod, which I think we've all seen. Like we've all seen a little bit of a higher ceiling on both of those players. Foegele sometimes looking like McDavid out there. But one thing I just want to say, as you mentioned, Leo and his like elite sort of patience in hockey IQ offensively to find the soft spot. If you are watching an Edmonton game out there and Connor McDavid enters the zone and Draisaitl's on the ice, which is usually the power play, but sometimes crunch time, whatever. As McDavid does his crazy bullshit of just like making everybody look silly and attracting all 5 defenders, keep an eye on 29. Like the way that he kind of trails a play and just like lingers and pounces, whether it's a direct feed from McJesus, which happens often, or if it's finding the second chance and bashing home the rebound or getting open for a one-timer just above the goal line that he just buries 9 out of 10 times. Like his sort of patience there brings me back. I always talk about Adam Oates. Brings me back to Adam Oates talking about what made Brett Hull so elite was his patience. His patience and the timing that the two had worked out. And this is less about the McDavid to Draisaitl connection than it is about Draisaitl having that Hull-like patience. Right. And just understanding spacing and anticipation and a lot of these soft skills that you don't always see, you can't always measure, but if you just keep an eye on Draisaitl. The next time McDavid's wowing you and you're like, holy shit, what is that shiny object flying across the screen? Pause for a second if you can and try to identify 29 because he's probably going to the best spot.
Yeah, totally. Yep. And I'll give Foegele and McLeod credit. They're ready for passes. They're like, because I think that's the big concern. They're not as high skilled forwards as some of the other guys on the lineup. They're ready for it, and the line looks really good. And then you get to juice up that top line with McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, and Hyman.
Best net front presence.
Hyman's
in the
awesome.
league.
But yes. Last thing on the Draisaitl line. That's also sneaky a tough line to play against.
Yep.
Right.
Size. It's tough.
It's really, and they play different styles.
Leo is big, really mean, power forward, not the fastest guy, not necessarily slow, but not the fastest. Foegele flies, McLeod flies, and I think Fogel's a little bit more of a beefcake flying into corners, threatening to break glass. But McLeod is as hard and fast of a forechecker as there is in the National. So I'm really interested. I'm going to definitely keep an eye on Edmonton.
Next time you watch them, just watch that line.
16-3 since the Thanksgiving break.
Mm-hmm. So the other is like all the futures bets when they were dog shit. Like the odds just like never caught up to their record. Like there was never really a good time to get in.
Yep.
And
Vegas knew something.
Well, I mean, I think we all did.
Yep. All right, you guys good on that? I have one last point.
Yeah, fire away.
Just vintage Senators last night. Take a third period lead in Calgary.
Oy vey.
Give up 4 in the third. Bam, bam, bam. Flames just said, oh, this is the Senators who we're playing. Let's just run it up.
What was the lead going into the third?
3-2.
That's Ottawa.
Yep. It's Ottawa in a nutshell. And it's not like they just blew a 3-2 lead. They gave up 4, just bam, and game over.
I mean, it's the story of Ottawa this year. I mean, it's as we talked about pre-pod. I mean, this could be a destination that people are looking to kind of plug from.
I don't think we're going to do it today. I'm approaching the lifeboats on my sinking Ottawa Senators.
Might be gone.
We're going to spend time on the pod probably next week looking at their pieces on the roster that might be on the market.
Well, what's wild to me, I mean, they're third place in terms of points in the league right now for the cellar. And
you mean bottom? They're the third worst team.
Third
in the
worst
league,
team. Thank you.
Behind only your Chicago Blackhawks.
Well, they're actually probably point percentages worse than the Hawks because they've only played 36 versus the Hawks playing 41, which is just still. I mean, they still have so many games to make up.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe the tank is the only answer at least at this point in this year.
Whatever. Let's get off the
Sens. Tank, but whatever.
Let's get off
Flames.
The
Do you want to talk a little Flames?
I mean, go for it. I haven't watched a lot of Calgary.
It's
That's
just.
on me.
I mean, it's a weird team. I think they're 18-18 with some overtime losses. They're at 41 points. It's just another weird year, and I think yes, you saw with the extensions put on hold for Lindholm and Hannafin, you would think that maybe Noah Hannafin's a big target at the deadline, and what do you see? I mean, at least we're talking about potential. I mean, we can save it. I guess we'll save it to maybe we do a little research into Calgary and to where they could be real sellers is what we'll take. So we'll table. But Calgary, you're coming in. You're on deck for next week.
Yeah, there are a number of Bruins angles licking chops on the Calgary roster.
Oh, I'm sure you can find some.
Lindholm is the guy at the trade deadline.
I would agree. But
Somebody gets
is this
in.
another guy you could really let walk for free, or not for free, but another guy you could really trade and let that go?
He doesn't want to play there. He doesn't fit their timeline.
I hear you.
Trade him.
I hear you. Rusty, what do you got for loose change?
My only loose change on. I'm not going to lie. I'm glad Army kind of carried us there. A little bit of a light week for me watching the games. I had my little ESPN app rant, which still just pisses me off. Army, we're going to have to get on the YouTube, and you're going to have to
teach him his way.
Educate this boomer on how YouTube's changed. I should know how to look up like widespread panic concerts. Okay. Across the league and all the talking heads, we are aligned on Nick Cousins.
We are.
Nobody likes the guy, and all of our takes have been reinforced by every talking head that has real NHL experience, which does not include your three hosts here. So
Not yet.
I don't want to say that's reaffirming because it's so obvious, but I did want to make that point on the pod.
Do you have
anything to add there?
Bieksa had a great rant about this. If anyone's
it all comes back to fucking Hossa and Rafi Torres.
I just think it's.
How many times are you going to reference the Hossa Torres?
I didn't even bring up Torres. I'm just saying it's worthy. I did last week. I'm not denying that. No, you just
talked about Bieksa, who went right to Torres as a guy that got taught a lesson.
I just think it's a worthy little insight to listen to. That's all.
The Chicklets guys are all over it. Bieksa was all over it. Did a good breakdown, and there's so much credibility with Kevin Bieksa talking about this stuff. Played in the league for a long time. Played a prominent role on winning teams.
That's my point.
Tough player, proven player, honorable player. Did played hard and was on the line of clean, dirty, but honorable. Right? He has so much credibility on this stuff. Two other guys, right? The curfew gang, the Updog, Scotty Upshaw, and the big fella Shane O'Brien. Yep. All that whole collective in universal agreement on this situation. So, I don't want to. It's not like taking a victory lap. I don't think it's that controversial to stand where we stood, obviously. But that was one takeaway. And then the other one is, I think our regular Termite listeners, our loyal Termites, award-winning Termites, or whatever we're going to call them, they know about my war on replay. And I could not be more smitten to welcome the best hockey player in the world to Team Rusty on replay. Connor McDavid, after a 2-1 Blackhawks win, 2-1 win over the Blackhawks last night, takes to the media, and in his scrum, he's asked about, I think it was an offsides ruling that cost the Oilers a goal. And in the immortal words of Connor McDavid, if it takes you 15 minutes to figure it out, it's probably not offsides. Connor, I could kiss you. It's all right there. It's all right there. The specific offsides review drives me nuts because I think 1 in 20 offsides reviews are a play where the player trying to stay onside by a millimeter actually gave them a competitive advantage getting past the defense and contributing to the chance. I also, part of me does fault the teams and the players for always making it so tight on offsides. It's like, man, stay onside. Stay onside. I know it's the fastest game in the world, and this is a level of play that I really know nothing about, moving my feet in, right? That's just a world that's so beyond what I can contribute to hockey perspective. But for fuck's sake, stay onside. But the actual rule of offside, it's offside's in place to prevent a lacrosse-style attackman, right? It's a rule to prevent offensive players standing by the net and just playing this airmail game where we're just chucking it all the way down, right? It's sort of like an icing type of governance rule to maintain the integrity of the sport and how things go. Mm-hmm. It is not this crazy, did he break the plane, instant replay, pylon cam NFL. It is not that. It's never been that. They've already adjusted. They already got rid of the two-line pass because they wanted to have more aggressive plays on the offensive blue line. And going back to Adam Oates, when you go offside, you don't just cost your team a possession. You cost your team offensive momentum. You are the NHL. Are you for offensive momentum or are you against offensive momentum? Like, get off your asses and deal with this offseason. End of this particular rant, but welcome to the fucking party, Connor.
I know you would be excited about that, and I know that was Team Rusty all the way. I hear you. I don't think it's worth spending too much more time on it because we've covered it pretty.
Well, and you're a flip-flopper. You're a replay defender that wears a different hat every week.
How would you feel?
I think my 2 minutes of last week. I still think putting a limit to everything is the answer to this, and that's where I stand on it. But
Jack, you're a gotta get it right guy.
I told you what I think. That's all right.
Yeah, you got to get it right. That's what Jack says.
2 minute limit.
Replay is the answer to getting it right.
How would you feel about bigger lines? Like a big-ass blue line.
Thickening the blue line?
I think it would look bad, but
yeah,
it might solve your issue. You're ticky-tacky.
No, it wouldn't, though, because the same thing would just happen 6 inches further.
Moving on.
Quick question. Would you rather have them not replay offsides?
So would you rather
or have defensemen in NHL video games handle the puck on the blue line properly?
I'm so done with Chell Online that I'm going to say I'd take the real professional ice hockey thing, not the online gaming.
Fair.
The other one is eliminating injuries, but whatever.
Moving on. Do you have any final loose change thoughts?
Those are my loose change bits. So, media stuff. I'm a
finally, hottest teams in the league. Florida Panthers, winners of their last 8. Winnipeg Jets, winners of their last 7. We've talked about the Peggers. Edmonton Oilers continue for their second 8-game winning streak. The Kraken continue their 7-game winning streak. So some impressive stuff throughout the league as we see some hot teams continue their streak into January.
Can I ask a question?
Always, Army.
Are the Jets contenders?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What they're doing with it, I mean, I know we talk about what
like a top 10 contender in the league?
Yes. You want to do it? You want to name 9? You want to name 10?
No, I'm with you. Great goaltending, pretty solid defense. That top line's buzzing. Adam Lowry's sick.
I mean, do we want to do this? Do we want to name 10 teams? Okay.
I'm with it. I just think they're like kind of edging into like this upper echelon of contenders, maybe.
I hear you.
And I
which is the biggest shock of the league, I think.
Biggest shock to this podcast, that's for sure. I owe the Winnipeg Jets a number of games, so they're going to be a big priority team for me the next few nights sitting and watching games.
Absolutely. Another great loose change.
I have one last point.
We're not done.
Ooh.
Jesper Wallstedt, number 1 goalie prospect in hockey, debuts
Minnesota
tonight.
Yep. He's playing right now.
For whom?
For the Wild.
For the Wild in Dallas, so he gets a test right away.
Yep.
But just there's a ton of hype on this dude, so I mean, could be a big difference in Minnesota's year and maybe future.
Was he a high pick? I know goalie prospects often aren't.
He was a first round 20th overall.
Okay. Which is high for a goalie.
But
that's high for a goalie.
They were talking. This guy was highly regarded. He played a few years in the SHL. Came over, I think, last year.
He was close to going top 10. I know this because Yzerman passed on him for a different goalie, which so far has not looked good. But Yzerman traded up, and everyone's like, they're going for Wallstedt. Goes for a different one.
Yeah.
Not looking great so far.
Just one item there, just for our listeners. It's like the goalie position in the NHL. It's like, obviously we know goalie it's almost like NFL quarterback in a sense, where when you watch a game, it's the one player that can have the biggest, like a completely disproportionate impact on the outcome. When it comes to drafting and developing goalies, and even trading for goalies, as we've talked a lot about the trade market, GMs and hockey people are so like tongue-tied, brain-tied, like their brains are broken. It's like me after the Bruins lost last year. Like they can't figure out goalies, so they're so afraid to go up in a draft and take a goalie really high because nobody really understands how they work. And the guy could be unreal one year, and he could be spiraling out of control the next. Spencer Knight. It's just like there are a million examples, and so the whole goalie mystique. I mean, it's tough for the guys that come up playing because there's only so many jobs in the National One, and 2, because you don't get drafted as high as you should because everybody's concerned because nobody understands what you do. And I just think that there's that bears mentioning for our listeners, just to be aware of that, because it's a very real dynamic where it's like it's pretty easy to evaluate skaters' defense, and we do it every single week. Evaluating goalies is tricky.
And the other only case I can think of is Devin Levi in Buffalo, where it's a losing year, and they're kind of just putting this guy through the ringer. I mean, he's played 19 games. He's 8-7, and he's their highly touted goalie prospect, but they're allowing him to, he's fallen now to an 8.89 save percentage, and does it make more sense for him to be a successful guy in the AHL for another year? Does it make we are not goalie whisperers. We're not going to claim to know that, and it's an interesting topic, and I think it'll come into play when we talk a little bit about Saturday picks in terms of what we've seen from goaltenders of the past and what we see now.
It goes back to an old maxim from a college roommate of mine who was a goalie at the third-rate prep school, South Kent. Kickers.
I will say.
They're like kickers.
I will say, and we'll get to the guy I'm about to mention soon.
We're teasing.
But what a pretty good setup to start your goalie career with Fleury.
Yep.
As your partner.
I agree.
Oh, fucking Fleury.
We'll
get to him. But,
Moving on
Frenchy
to Termite of the
bastard.
Week, the Woodshed, the Wood Show. Who's joining the colony? I got to ask. I got to pull an army. Curtis McDermott. Has he been added?
I do know him, Colorado. Plays forward and D.
Has he been added? That's the question.
Concerned he
knuckle
was
draggers.
added?
I'm not. I don't think.
He totally was not.
No, he's not.
And he's going to be a Stanley Cup champion that's going on to the Termite squad in 2022, winning with the Colorado Avalanche. And a guy who is kind of an interesting role. I mean, yes, he broke in with the LA Kings, spent a few years in the A. He's not a guy that's going to spend a lot of time on the ice, but is playing an interesting role for the Avs, both up and down on both sides of the puck. So Curtis McDermott is my pick this week, and we'll check if it's found out that he is on there. I will owe you guys two Termites.
He's not.
I don't think he is either, is what I want to say.
We've never talked about him.
6'5", 233, big boy.
Jeez.
What's he averaging on his ice time? Not much, I know it's that, but no, Curtis McDermott. What do we got, boys?
I once again, I have not watched this guy.
He's averaging 4 minutes of ice time a game.
4 minutes
in 18 games.
Okay, so
well, that's a knock on his resume, as he's barely, in the lineup. How many games, Jack?
18.
Right. So, and that's not health related.
No, that's absolutely not health related.
And I
agree.
And I know McDermott, right?
How do you even average 4 minutes a game, though? I didn't know that was
8
a role
minutes
in the
the year
NHL.
before, and in the year that they won it, it was 7:23.
But like the worst player of the team averages like 10. Typically.
Yeah.
4 minutes is like
Those are biz numbers.
like why are you even dressed? Like
it feels like a waste of a roster spot.
Well, I'll tell you why. Actually, I'll tell you why. Because he is a fucking goon when he plays forward. He runs around and he's there to like maybe fight or push someone around or go start a scrum. But he also could play D.
Yep.
And so when he's
guys.
logging just 4 minutes and he's sitting on the bench, if there's an injury to a defenseman, he could kill a penalty for you. There's your answer.
His lowest on the
I like
season.
it. It's just that's got to be like close to. If he averages 4 a game this year, that's got to be close to a record.
But I want to also dovetail. We talked about Brendan Smith last week.
Yeah.
This is not Brendan Smith. No. Okay, this is like 4 tiers below. Yeah. So going back to our old Kachuk scale, right? Brendan Smith is the 10 on this. McDermott's like the 4. Yeah. And this whole genre is like the last guy on the roster. So, he doesn't skate well enough to be compared to Miles Wood. He has a willingness to go be physical because if he didn't, he wouldn't be in the NHL.
Well, at 6'5", you got to be physical.
So, hey, it's a Termite pick. I think this is going to be proved to be a tough roster to make as I do my audit leading into All-Star break and our Termite special. But that's what I've got on the McDermott.
It's going to be really hard to watch him, too.
I mean, shit, the guy's lowest numbers. It's 2 minutes and 42 seconds.
Don't look away.
His game low and high is, I think, about 7 minutes.
Hey,
so
life comes at you
9.
fast.
Sorry, 9.
If you blink, you might just miss it.
Literally having a blink and he's off the ice.
Hey, Stanley Cup champion. Champion. Any thoughts on that? Any final thoughts on that? Are we ready to keep it rolling to Saturday picks?
Let's roll.
All right. Do you want to set the stage for what happened in Columbus? I think you do.
What happened in Columbus on Saturday night?
The MAF legend.
We were together for this, too, which made it better.
And so, we're recording the pod. It was a special Saturday pod dealing with some holiday travel.
Picks were already out.
We go out for dinner.
So we had the fucking game on, and there's goals here, goals there. It's pretty much a one goal the whole way. 2-1 Columbus, 2-2, 3. And Columbus hanging in there. They're tough. The Saturday pick itself was a fucking ballsy and a good Saturday pick, okay? So you're fucking welcome out there, even though it proved to be a loss. But compared to you two fucking chalk sniffers,
Nice.
this was the Saturday pick that gave any juice to our Parlo, which, by the way, we went 0-3 on. So the gutless boys get rewarded with a gut punch. So screw you guys too. But fucking Fleury. So again, you guys know how to watch highlights. I obviously don't. But Fleury made 2 sprawling saves in the final minute
So the first
of regulation?
the first one, he's pulled.
Oh,
And he's
that's
trying to
right.
get to the
Comes
bench.
off the bench.
Turnover. Fleury comes off the bench. It just airs it out on an open net, but he airs full airborne. Diving with the stick, makes a save.
So Columbus has the lead here late,
Yes.
and they're defending the lead against an empty net. And they're about to ice it, not only make the money line, but the puck
No, it's
line.
not an ice. This is from in the zone shot. They skate down to get a shot that's like not going to be an ice.
So my point is, good Saturday pick, Rusty.
No, I think
Yes.
there's no one denying that you went for it.
MAF fucked me.
But MAF sprawls out. They immediately go down and tie it. It was just unbelievable. Then an OT, full cross-ice laser of a pass, just sprawling glove safe. I mean, the glove is like past where his foot is.
One thing I'll say on Fleury is Hank Lundqvist on the TNT crew. God, if you're not lost in his eyes and you listen to his analysis, it's pretty useful.
You can stay focused.
The characteristic of Fleury that he valued the most, they had some graphic or whatever, they're talking about like the ideal goalie, and Lundqvist's thing was Marc-Andre Fleury's athleticism.
Yep. Oh, we've talked about his ability
it
to
was
stay
on full
healthy.
display.
He might be the last goalie we were just talking about goalie drafts. He might be the last ever 1-1 goalie.
Well, and that's talking about it is in looking at these guys. The Lundqvist era, the Brodeur era, the Patrick Waugh era. I mean, this guy just tied Patrick Waugh on the all-time goalie win list, and you just, it's
Listen, I'm not.
it's unbelievable what we've seen from Marc-Andre Fleury. It's something you won't potentially see.
And I've got a lot of problems with Hall of Fame stuff because it just pisses me off and it's inconsistent and I don't like it. And it turns into oftentimes a popularity contest. Marc-Andre Fleury's career, was he ever the dominant goalie of his era? No. But the longevity, staying consistent, and everybody loves him. I mean, he's going to walk into the Hall of Fame. So
It's also, if you go by what I think is,
and he's still good. Like, he's not great,
he's
but
still good.
He's still like the best backup goalie in the league.
Yeah. I think you may have turned me on to this metric, Ross, but I think a good metric for Hall of Fame, can you describe their era without them? You can't. Fleury is in that discussion.
You can't without Fleury.
Fleury is a part of the last 15 years of hockey. You have to mention him when you talk about goalies.
Not totally wrong. And again, I'm not digging my heels in anti-Fleury.
It's hard to be. But I hear you.
Yeah. Anyway,
Also, just other quick goalie note. We talked about Lundqvist. I saw this today. It was pretty funny.
it's the goalie hour.
Lundqvist has a identical twin brother.
Yes, he does.
Oh, yeah.
I actually saw his.
They were on a podcast together, and the brother was telling a story about how when he goes to New York, he's just treated like Lundqvist.
He's treated like a king.
Yeah, no, but he's like, I was out to dinner and they were thanking me, and he's like, me and my wife started to catch on with what was going on. It's like they gave us free dessert and everything, and they're like, oh, can you sign the menu before you leave? And he's like, oh, I'm actually his brother.
I wonder if they still want him to sign it. His brother did play. I think he played in the NHL
games,
for a little bit,
Yeah.
mostly abroad.
Was he a forward or a defenseman? He was a skater.
Forward, I think.
Yeah.
But
He was a forward.
All right, Saturday picks. As Ross hinted at, the boys went 0-3. The records stand as 8-4 for Rusty, 7-5 for Alex, and I'm at 500 at 6-6. Who's your pick, Rusty?
I was getting real horned up to pick the Flyers at the Jets, and I saw that Philly's coming off of a back-to-back Friday night, so I'm avoiding that. And my Saturday pick is going to be the Coyotes at the Wild. The Yotes are probably going to be the favorite. They're on the road, but sometimes we know the road can be good for the boys. Wild are coming off a back-to-back, and I'm rolling Yotes over Wild after the Yotes beat my Bruins in a shootout in overtime last night, which I also didn't watch and haven't seen the highlights of.
Oh, and it helps that the Wild have a tough game versus the Flyers. So that's
Hey,
a tough team to play against.
Ride the Yotes. I'm not going to put on the stupid hat, but
Yotes at the Wild. Alex, Arm Dog, who's your pick?
Yeah, so I'm going to go to a familiar place here. I'm afraid of being a chalk monster again, so I'm not going to do that.
It's working.
Although chalk monster last week was good for reverse parlay.
Yeah.
If anyone hit
right.
that, damn. I'm going to the boys. Wings over Kings in Detroit. Little rematch. I'm sure the Kings want some revenge, but they're not playing well, and Detroit is. And I like the Red Wings.
Yeah, we'll see. The Kings are struggling. Now's the time to pick against them.
All right, I think there still might be some juice.
Is it also that
I'm not going to lie, though.
Up?
Yeah, this feels like a get-right game for me.
Wake the sleeping beast.
We'll see, though. We'll see.
Yep. Record-wise, these teams are a little closer in record, but I am taking the Hurricanes to beat the Pittsburgh Penguins in Raleigh, 6 p.m. start. Got to get back.
6 p.m. Central, 7 local.
Yep. Got to get back on the right the ship and get back over a 500, so I'm taking my Canes to beat the Pens.
I like it, boys. No matinees, so I'm
from
very anti-matinee, as we know. All right, good things. The Saturday picks are in.
Saturday picks are in. Graphic will be posted on Friday morning.
What's the record across the pod? I know we all took losses last week, so I'm still. Do I have a 1-game lead or a 2-game lead?
1-game lead. 8-4, 7-5, 6-6 are the records. Rusty's sweating a little bit, but he's feeling it.
I'm a Bruins fan, so I'm ready to choke.
It's one thing you do have a card up your sleeve is the choke card. Oh, God. Sorry, buddy. Mailbag. Feel free to hit us up at the mailbag. We are always here to take emails. Hit us up at SLOTSHOTPODCAST@gmail.com. Definitely a fun, exciting stuff with the drama in terms of Philly and Anaheim, and we're always looking forward to a fun year. As Ross said, it's been historically drama-filled, action-filled this year, and we love it, and we're here for it, and we're always here to cover it. Closing thoughts before we close her on down tonight, boys.
Final closing thought. I learned today Tom Wilson was awarded Washingtonian of the Year with a broken nose and a full thing on his nose.
For charity stuff and what he does off the ice, probably?
I don't know. I'm going to have to look into it. It's just kind of funny to me that first off, that it would be a hockey player. Second off, that it's Tom Wilson winning Washingtonian of the Year. In
Tremendous.
In a city territory that, has a lot of people doing things. Tom Wilson wins Washingtonian of the Year. I wonder how other people like.
Well, it's none of those scumbag politicians. I'll tell you that much.
Really, they're like, let's go Tom Wilson this year.
I like it. Good closing thought, Rusty.
Nothing hockey related. It's the Belichick watch. That's the refreshing Twitter every day. Yeah. And you want the take, or do we keep it off the pod here?
For Abe's?
You want the take, guys?
Take it, man. It's all right. It's your closing thoughts.
Okay. And I'm going to keep it short and shut me off when it gets long. Bill Belichick is not just the coach of the Patriots. He's the head of the football operation. He's the Fuhrer of the football operation. Your job in that position is about filling the building with staff and players that produce a winning operation. He and his ego, his personality, how things have gone, his resume, where he is in his career, where he is in his life, all of that has contributed to the mess that is awarded us the 3rd overall pick. That's the problem. Clean house. The organization needs to be completely restructured. And if Mike Vrabel is the head coach in a trust-filled, philosophically aligned relationship with a new GM, I'm cool with that. Vrabel's probably my number one coach I'd want that's not an offensive guy. I think if you look across the league, primarily it is offensive guys, and the trouble you fall into with a defensive coach is that you're going to bring in a hotshot offensive guy, and if he's successful, he's going to get a job to go be a head coach somewhere else. So now you're constantly changing that offensive system when you have the So that's my concern about a D coach and about Vrabel specifically. But my big thing is the organization, and every minute that goes by, it's more and more likely that the Crafts are going to try to find a way to piece things together to keep some parts around, whether it involves Bill or not. It involves Mayo, it involves O'Brien, it involves some of the other people, and I can't handle that. I will be really, really disappointed, and I will be completely anti-Crafts if that's the case. And the most disgusting part of all of it is that the Crafts' hesitation to move on right now, it's based on two things: public relations with the fan base and their own, and specifically Robert's own, vain credit claiming for the role that he played in New England's success and his attempt to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which probably will happen again. It's a stupid little thing, but he's so obsessed with it. And he wants to say that he kept everything together, and that's why he's such a Hall of Famer. And so he's going to try to say, well, we're not going to completely clean house because that's what dysfunctional teams do. Blah, 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 blah. You are dysfunctional. You have the 3rd overall pick. You are a fucking mess. You've made these decisions. We're not. That's what joke franchises do. Look in the mirror. You're a joke right now. End of rant.
Beautiful.
Yep. Tough life living as a Boston sports fan.
The good news is we can all, and I speak for all of us here, we can all be fully invested in the Lions playoff run.
Yeah.
Starting this Sunday night
2
in
of 3
Detroit.
can say that.
Sunday night in Detroit. Dan Campbell and the Lions. Oh, I can't wait. Army, I'm looking forward to
LA?
it.
Yeah.
They got LA?
We got the Rams. Stafford's coming back. Jerseys have been banned from the stadium
Woo!
Really?
by Twitter.
Come on. That guy did so much for you guys.
Not what Jared Goff did. He got us a home playoff game,
Come
okay?
on. Come on.
Jared Goff redemption. McVay's going to cry, and Goff's going to laugh in his face.
All right, ladies and gentlemen,
Respectfully.
another phenomenal episode of Slot Shot Podcast. If you want to follow the boys, go give Russ a follow at Rusty Pedroia. Give Armdog a follow at Armdog_SS. Give me a follow at Sippyman. Follow the pod at Slot Shot Podcast. Like I said, Mailbag, we're always open. We're always here for your thoughts, comments, critiques. Anything you got, just send it our way. We'll give it a read. I guarantee you that. If you like our content, you like what we've been doing, hit the like and subscribe button directly below this video. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you guys next week for another fun podcast.